Ooh, hot topic. And you want to know all about it. That's why you are here. I like this topic too. Women are waking up, becoming more empowered, being in tune with their bodies. Have you ever wondered, are men and women wired differently when it comes to our needs and desire for sex? What's intimacy, really? And how do you feel when someone tells you, I can't live without you? And what does a healthy, intimate relationship look like? That's just some of what Christine and I talk about openly and playfully. Come for a ride on the Healing Train. I'm Rania, your host, relationship coach, speaker, author, practicing energy healing modalities. I bring to you these discussions so we can heal, become empowered, and grow together. This content contains mature subject matters. Listener and viewer discretion is advised. To work with me, you can find me on www.r2rcoaching.ca. Want to be a guest on the show? Send an email to guest@healingtrain.ca. Today, I have my guest, Christine. Hello, Christine.
Hello, Rania. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm very excited for our conversation today. We've been looking forward to this for a while. And just before we begin, I want you to introduce yourself and what you do.
My name is Christine Forde, and I work with individuals and specifically women entrepreneurs, and business owners to create better brand deals. Also, work with the psychology behind creating more leverage, activating that within themselves, and then also approaching their business with more stabilization, structure, and expansion. So we're moving you into that next level of income, into that next sort of more cohesiveness within your business. And so I love doing this because it's such an empowering thing to see women activate their vision for like bigger impact in their life and in their communities.
Awesome. You are the perfect person for us to be talking with today about this very hot topic. Before we begin, I just want to share a thought. Many women learn to experience sex as something that's for someone else,
Mm.
while men are taught it's something they take or earn or is the right for some reason. And this gets taught, and it somehow quietly messes with everyone's mind and expectations. The question that many might be wondering, and that's for men and women, are they actually wired differently sexually? Or are we all just responding to the stories that we were handed way too young? And at what point did sex stop being enjoyable? Can we start from there, Christine?
Yeah, I'm coming from an intuitive place, and just so you guys know, I've had this ability to read intuitively since I was a child, and also understand patterns and psychology around the human condition. So when I'm speaking on this, I'm speaking from that lens. So, discern accordingly. Take what resonates, leave the rest behind, as I always say. So my perspective on, is this something we're socially taught to like basically perform? And I would say it's a performance largely. Because when we actually sit with our own sexuality and our own way of connecting with that, like, what do we really feel? I think it's very individual. I don't know that I can brush it with I don't think it's a broad stroke brush kind of thing. I think it's very individual. And I think when we like sit with ourselves and ask ourselves, like, well, what do I feel about? How do I relate to this? What does it feel like for me? When I think about that, it's like, what did I witness growing up? What was normal in my household when I grew up? And so a lot of childhood stuff is very much like you're kind of being downloaded subconsciously, all of the things that you're witnessing, hearing, seeing, and then also what's not said. For me, it was like people are saying this, but then they're doing that. People are doing this, but then they're saying that. This is, and even, subconsciously, like, for me, it's like I could hear a lot of things that were not being said. And so I'd sit there wondering, like, what's wrong with everybody? Why are they all lying? They say they like this, they say they want this, they're saying this, but then they're doing that. And
Mm,
so for me, my experience around this topic specifically was very much like when I look at this, how do I relate to it? I never really felt like I related to it. I never felt like there was like it was for me. So you're right in that there's something to that concept of like, this is for me. I mean, I grew up in a very like religious household, well, somewhat religious.
mm,
And so, Catholic and stuff like that. So there's like shame, there's religious shame that's
mm,
pressed on us at a young age. And you don't know any better because you don't know how to question things. You don't know how to discern. You don't know how to like look at things from, hey, this is just what they believe. You think it's true.
mm,
You think that this is the truth and there's nothing else out there because you don't have the ability to discern quite as well as you do as when you're an adult and your brain is fully developed, right? So I would say like if, societally, there's definitely this sort of story. But I also feel like there's something about, like kind of what I'm sensing right now is like there's something about women having to kind of protect themselves a little bit. And so there's this feeling of like, I have to keep myself closed so that I can decide who is right and who's not right. Whereas I think maybe for men, and I can only speak from what I've seen, not obviously the lived experience, but like, it seems like there's not a need to protect themselves. There's a need to, pursue, to chase, to go after, right? And so there's this dynamic that happens between men and women where women are, why are we protecting? You know, um, you know, from a religious standpoint, it could be like, there's a purity thing, right? From a standpoint of psychology, it's like there's a vulnerability. There's an inherent biological vulnerability of being exposed to something that maybe you don't have much power over, right?
What I'm hearing from you is that it's a combination of everything. It's not
Yeah,
one answer. And the degree to how much those influences, external influences, and some internal influences affect your relationships and your understanding of sex and how you communicate with sex itself is dependent on that lived experience, right? So one person who lived in this particular culture versus this other culture will experience things differently because they have witnessed different things or raised in different ways. The religious beliefs were different, so that will influence them. But then let's take in consideration our intrinsic nature, which
yeah,
is how we are wired, a man versus a woman, our bodies, our hormones. And if we put all those things together, this nice concoction, you get how you show up in your sexual encounters and your beliefs and in how you carry on your relationships. Does that make sense in what I'm saying?
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is that I don't feel like it's just one thing. It would be nice to say it's just this. And now the case is rested and we're done and we can move on from this conversation. The reason
Yeah.
that this conversation has existed for thousands of years is because of our intrinsic, nature combined with what we've been raised with and what society has done. And I think society often responds to a lot of different things. You know what I mean? Like we could get into the astrology if you wanted to. Like there's so many things that society is responding to. It's not necessarily like, there's needs and there's desires, there's unfulfilled needs and unfulfilled desires. And like where does that energy go? It has to go somewhere because it's part of us, it's part of our collective existence, right? And then, you've got the entire nature versus nurture, like you've got the entire planet, like, all animals have some level of, procreation type of thing going on.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, I mean, it's around us all the time. It's not really something we can fully leave behind, but we can pretend like we don't really think about it, right? But I don't think that we can ever get away because it's part of our biology.
Yes, and I feel that we've come a long way, Christine. I mean, as I'm talking here with you, I am bringing up concerns that we've lived, right? Like I lived for I'm in my 40s now, so I mean you could imagine I've lived through quite a few eras and I've witnessed a change. Let's just say I take myself back to high school days, right? What I thought then, what I knew then versus what I know now, right?
Yeah.
And the behavior, the relationships, the evolution of everything. So we're talking broadly here and we're bringing a bit of the past as the background. But today things are a little bit different. Today I can say that women are more open. Women are more rejecting the idea that I'm only here for reproduction, like I'm not gonna just do this act just for that. Although there are still some religions that exist out there and some women are still trapped in that. There's nothing anyone can do about it at this point. But I believe that women are being more, they're opening their eyes and they're becoming more in tune with their bodies. And that's a huge, huge development in our sex story. And men are starting to understand, or I should say, respect a woman's needs. It's no longer, we no longer say, oh, a man has needs. Now it's understand that a woman has needs too, right? I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Oh yeah, no, I mean it's definitely changed and it's very interesting like how that's shifted the trajectory of, population growth and things of that nature, and so it's like as but you're right in saying that it is about us knowing our bodies, having more intimacy and respect for our own bodies. Like the fact that we can have a conversation about like, oh, like a woman being in pain, say having like cycle pain, for example, and probably in the 80s or the 70s or the 60s, like maybe it would have been completely dismissed out of hand and she would have been like cast sort of like you're ridiculous kind of thing. And you still hear those stories, but we're actually talking about it. We're talking about the dismissal of pain. We're talking about the dismissal of our needs. We're talking about that. So while institutions may not always be on the same sort of progression, if you will, we are aware, and like there's so much more education about the womb and about our connection to our own bodies, the concept of even energy when intimacy is involved, the exchange of energy. I don't remember hearing that when I was a kid, obviously, but like, I can't imagine this was something that was overly talked about. Now it's much more talked about. You can find a lot of communities that talk about the womb space and that talk about intimacy and like women kind of moving in the direction of like, well, this is what I really want. Well, oh, I can't have that because blah, blah, blah reason. And it's like, why not though? Who's saying no? Or is it just, inherited, right? So if you want more respect, you want more intimacy, you want more freedom to choose, you want all of these things, it's like owning those desires and then like embodying that too, right? There's a level of embodying it when it's no longer a conversation in your head of like, I don't get to have this, I want this, but I don't get to have this. It stops being enacted as much in your experience. And when you perceive it or you have something, you can actually put up a boundary for it. You can actually make a change. There's a lot more support available for us to like, make those choices for ourselves.
I love that. That's just beautiful. I love that we're having these kind of conversations instead of just talking about let's have safe sex and let's talk about, make sure that you don't get pregnant and, and all those topics, which is great. This is a foundation, basics, right? But now we're going deeper. We're talking
Mhm.
about our relationship with sex itself and where did the ideas come from and where are we now and where we're going forward. And I love you mentioned intimacy there in your answer. And I want us to talk about that. That's a huge topic. And through my experiences, I can share a little bit that I feel that people are generally more open in, sorry to say this, well, not sorry really, but we can be naked physically in bed with someone and have a sexual encounter, but we are very preserved in being naked emotionally. To
Mm.
me, that is intimacy. Intimacy for me isn't you're holding my hands or like you're rubbing my face or you're staring deep down my eyes and telling me I love you. And I mean, these are all great and they are part of the intimacy, don't get me wrong, but that is not what intimacy is. It goes way beyond that. I'm gonna stop it here and I'm gonna let you talk about it.
Yeah, to me, intimacy is really about the deeper connection that we can have. I like that phrase where they say, into me, I see. And like that intimacy comes first with yourself. Now, what's happening with a lot of women is like, we're not just doing a job to do a job. We're not just taking a path to take a path because that's what we're supposed to do. We're not just, um, oh, you're this age, go get married and have babies now. Like there's a more conscious process that's happening, and it's not just coming from outliers, it's coming from like more women in general. So it's like that hundredth monkey effect kind of thing. It's like, you might have had outliers in like the 1800s or something like that or whatever. And you might hear those stories, but like, now it's more common to like, what do I really want? And when I let myself go after, entertain the thought of what do I really want? Let me go after that. Let me have that. Let me experience that, right? We start to like want to have relationships that involve that too. Like it trickles down, it's a trickle down effect, right? So it's like as soon as I become more conscious about myself, about my desires, about my where I want to go, how I want to move forward, how I want to help humanity, whatever it is I want to do, it trickles into my relationships, it trickles into my intimacy patterns. So if maybe I would have been a little bit less sort of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have any expectations from my partner and just accept that this is what they can provide for me and that's it. That's a low standard, right? Now it's considered a low standard, but at one point or another, it wasn't. That was just normal, right? So, like, we're reconstituting what is normal for us in this conversation, in this entire, like, and I mean the larger conversation. So, intimacy being a branch off of like more intimacy with self, more intimacy with destiny, path, uh, you know, uh, pursue pursuing what's important to me, deciding if I want to have children or not. Like, I mean, that came from even having the option of having safe sex and things like that, right? And then as like sort of we're evolving, it's like, okay, well, maybe I don't want to take medications for this. There are other ways to, not have that experience, but to have another experience that where maybe I don't have children, but I have ways of dealing with that. And I not in a necessarily a negative way, but in a, I don't know, like what I'm trying to say here is we have options. And so, when I speak on this, it's not to diminish life. I don't diminish life at all. But when I speak on this, I mean there are, lots of methodologies that we can explore outside of, certain ones that have been publicized and sold to us, let's say, marketed to us, right? Especially in more spiritual circles, I find that this is more explored, right? Learning our cycles, learning about how the body works, how our bodies work, how these things kind of come about. So when we're speaking about intimacy, I would say that one big thing that I think is sort of difficult for a lot of people is recognizing incompatibility.
Oh my
It's
God, that's
like
a big one. That's a huge
huge.
one, Christine. Oh, I'm
It's
so glad you
huge.
brought that up.
Yeah, because the thing is, oh, I'm so into this person, and maybe you're on birth control and you're like your hormones are all like whack out of whack a little bit, and so you're attracted to people that once you're off that birth control, you're like, oh, I'm not even really into this person anymore. So there's things that mess with it, like there's hormonal things that can mess with it, but then there's also just like I want this in my life. Like, say you want children in your life and you end up with a partner who doesn't want children, very firm about that. But you say, oh yeah, he's gonna get over it and we'll just have children anyway. And I've heard stories about this and it doesn't go well because your values are different. And that's the incompatibility. You cannot force your values onto someone else just because you want that from them. You know what I mean? And so when we're recognizing incompatibility, why do I want the person who doesn't want this thing? What in me is desiring this partner specifically who literally does not want anything I want? Like that's where I'd be questioning
I
myself and
was
I'd be like,
there. I was there
why am
myself.
I attracted to this person?
I'm serious. I did the exact same thing you just explained right now. I did that for the longest time. I stayed in a relationship where I kept hoping that at some point he would be this person and he would want what I want and he would match me where I was. It's like, and I'm not making myself better than him in any way or anyone for that matter. I'm just saying that I was in a particular position and he wasn't, and I kept on waiting for him to catch up, right? But it doesn't work that way. And I remember a friend of mine continuously said to me this example that I can't remember now word for word, but to sum it up is that you're expecting him to be someone he's not. And you're
Yeah.
being with the potential of what he could be, and he isn't. So it's either you accept him as he is now or you don't. And that brings up the compatibility point that you just did, which is beautifully said, beautifully said. And from what I'm hearing, what we're discussing so far is that, I mean, it's safe to say that your level of intimacy with your partner can only be as deep as the level of intimacy you've met yourself.
Yeah.
We need to be intimate with ourselves first, meaning we know who we are, what we want, what we don't want, what we can allow and say, okay, fine, let it go. And some are like our hard points where it's like, no, not happening, right? And if we become in touch with our own emotions, then we're able to be in touch with someone else's emotions. And that's when intimacy is built. And then, of course, sex comes in and all of that lovely stuff of the hand holding and the eye gazing and all of that, because that is part of it. But if you're not comfortable in your own body, if you're not comfortable with your own emotions, you're not secure in yourself, then how can you do that with someone else?
It's hard. I don't think it's impossible, but it's very hard and it requires a great deal of compartmentalizing and potentially performative action, which isn't real intimacy anyways. It's
Then it
just
becomes
kind of
intellectual intimacy, not
it's intellectual
emotional
intimacy,
intimacy.
which there's nothing wrong with that either, but is it what you want? If it's not what
Right.
you want, then it's like, okay, this is nice, but also not what I want. I want emotional intimacy. I want physical intimacy. I want to be met in this place. And I'm not going to try and fantasize a person into being something that they're not. I'm going to take, this is, life experience gives us more discernment about what we want, what we don't want, what we will tolerate, what we won't tolerate, our boundaries, all of that. And I think it's actually a positive thing to have like, long-term relationships over time so that you can learn about yourself. Because I feel a lot of ways that relationships are like a mirror for us and they can show us where we still have some work to do. They can show us where we're expanding and we're moving into a more positive direction with our own personal growth and evolution and soul alignment, whatever else, right? So to me, it's a very positive thing to like go through a challenging relationship, yeah, like it's painful, but like it also shows you a lot about who you are, about what you want, about what you don't want. And like you can't go into a relationship not having any of that knowledge and then expect everything to work out perfect. I mean, maybe it could happen, but it just depends on the person, I think. So, yeah, I just feel like the compatibility piece is something that people have to look at more frequently and like say, okay, what is it that's really important to me? What is a non-negotiable? Like I'm going to give a random example. If I were to buy a house right now, a non-negotiable would be a bathtub. I have lived in places without a bathtub. I do not like this. It's like, and I know that sounds so cavalier and,
Oh,
and
I like my
silly,
bathtubs too. Trust me, I'm good.
right? So it's funny because I had this conversation with my mom at one point, and she's like, "Yeah, I could never live in a house without a bathtub because you see these rentals and stuff, and they have shower stalls. Like, where's the bathtub?" You know? But we assume that there's going to be something there that we want, but we don't actually know. So this is where that discovery process of like, let's date or, let's have a courtship or whatever it is, and then like discover, like, don't jump into it like expecting the world. Jump into it like, let's have some fun here. Let's see where we come up to. Let's see what our values are. Let's learn about each other. And if it's not compatible, we can walk away. And now emotions are more complicated than that, of course. But like, I think that's the formula.
Are you enjoying your journey on the healing train? I hope you are, just as much as I am loving this conversation and every conversation with every guest. We are talking about sex, relationships, becoming empowered, and yes, healing too. We need to heal the old narrative around our relationship with sex, pleasure, and our bodies. A lot of work goes into these episodes, and I would love for more people to find this. If you felt how powerful my message is, support this channel, this platform, wherever you are tuning from. Give some love, comment, and share it. It only takes a few seconds to help this show and help me reach more people. Thank you.
Let's get a little spicy.
Yes.
Okay. Visualize this. A very hot scene between two people right now. They're very, very intense, feeling one another's emotions, touching, whatnot. And I'm not going to paint any further than that because then it's going to get a little too crazy. But let's just imagine that from a sensual perspective, two people connecting. And when you're in their presence, it is super intense to the point that you feel like there's nothing else in the world other than the two of you.
Mm.
Time stopped. There's nothing else but just this feeling of love, of being held, of being safe, of being intimate sexually. But here's the thing. Is this an indication that there is more than sexual intimacy in this relationship? Leaving that to you.
Yeah, I mean, that feels like a trick question to be honest.
But that's
Um,
the thing, Christine, because we can get confused.
yeah,
We
absolutely.
can confuse intensity with intimacy. And that's why I painted a picture that possibly quite a few people experienced by now.
Oh
But there
yeah.
is a difference between a particular intensity that is followed with real intimacy or just sexual intimacy, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah, it's the difference between surface and depth. When somebody says, I love you, I can't live without you, and like I need to be with you. There
That's
is a
actually a
lot
turn
of
off for me right now. If someone tells me I can't live without you, that's a turn off already.
same. But there was a younger version of me who thought that was the most romantic thing I could
Yes,
potentially ever hear. And
agreed.
that's because she never felt chosen by anybody. So it was actually a wound that was internalized. And it's like, well, I need somebody to prioritize me exclusively and all of this. It's like, do I really need that? Or is it compensating for something that I have a wound around in childhood, for example. So I always look at it from that like that angle because that's where you're learning about how you're seen, how you're perceived, what you get to have in this world, typically you're programmed at that point, right?
But Christine, I'm
To
sorry to
me,
interrupt you there for a second, but this comes from a mentality of someone who's done the inner work and have been healing. I've been
oh
healing,
yeah,
you've been healing, and we meet people in our world that are healing, and that's why we recognize those patterns and we
yeah.
see where they're coming from. But what about the people who haven't done the work? They still believe that this is the most romantic thing ever and it's the best thing in the world, right? And I'm glad that you're bringing that up.
Yeah, I mean, it's like intensity and intimacy can feel the same, but it depends on the depth, like we said before, the depth at which you've met yourself will determine the depth at which you can show up fully with that partner and receive them as well, right? And give to them vice versa, right? So there's something about that, like, yeah, intensity can feel like it's the whole thing, it's the whole world. But who are you in the relationship outside of that moment of intimacy?
Yes.
Outside of that person choosing you, prioritizing you. If they go off and they're like chatting up some other people, does that like, oh my God, my entire identity and my relationship is under siege? And so there's a lot of drama in that, right? Whereas if you're meeting somebody with true intimacy and depth, and vice versa, they're meeting you with true intimacy and depth, there's less drama involved, I find.
I think it's great for us to perhaps paint a picture somehow, some way, because this is how people sometimes get the point. What does it look like? What can it
Mhm.
look like a relationship between people that are compatible sexually and their intimacy in the sex and the bedroom is great, but then
Yeah.
also on the emotional and somewhat mental and maybe even spiritual intimacy. What does that look like? What does a healthy intimacy looks like? Can you paint us a picture?
I think it's different for everyone. So I will say that, like, I can't, it's not one size fits all, but I think from what I've seen and what I perceive, it might even feel almost a little boring. Now, I don't mean boring sexually. I don't mean like you don't have adventure, you don't have spiciness. I mean, it's stable. It's it feels like, okay, I can come back to this. This is my safe space, or this is my place in the world that I can be fully myself with my partner. They can be fully themselves with me. And yeah, we're going to have idiosyncrasies. We might not fully agree 100% all the time. That's no relationship is 100% perfect like that. Doesn't exist. So anybody who's fantasizing about that, sorry, not sorry to burst your
Wake
bubble.
up, wake up.
But, if you're in a place of like, okay, yeah, that's their idiosyncrasy, whatever. I'm cool with it. Like and you have to be honest with yourself. Do not lie to yourself about that ever, because you lie to yourself, you're not going to create a good path going forward. You're going to build resentment, and it's not going to be good for any of you. When I look at like compatibility, I just feel like there's so much more love coming from that couple for each other. They're literally considering each other when the other person isn't in the room.
Mm.
And they're not tearing that person down. They're not, complaining about them endlessly. Because when you're complaining about somebody endlessly, oftentimes what's going on is there's an unmet need and you can't actually talk about it. If you can't have communication with your partner that's honest, without one person taking it super personal or like an attack on their character, or
We're
you
walking on
feeling like
eggshells.
yeah, if you're walking on eggshells, you're not in a good communication. If your communication sucks, your intimacy is probably not very good either, because intimacy, I believe, is a form of communication. If your communication is just out of alignment, you're just not meeting each other, you're on separate pages, then there's a lack of connection that's really being available there, so that you can actually work through something, so that you can actually find that compatibility. I know I'm saying a lot of things. This isn't working, that's not working, that's whatever. But I would say, like I said, the stabilization to me feels a bit boring, but it's also still it's a safe space. Like I feel like this person has my back, I got their back. It's not us against the world, because I don't think it's that sort of dichotomy, but it might feel that way in some cases. It might feel like I know they got my back, and like I know that I can tell them anything and we can have this intimate experience together, and there's no sort of underlying panic of, "Ooh, what are they going to think?" or maybe they're judging me, or "Ooh, like maybe I shouldn't have said that." "Ooh, like what if they talk about this with this other person that we both know?" Like, you know what I mean? Like there's none of that external interference. It's like you're able to have that full communication with each other and that full intimacy with each other, and like every part where you're actually compatible, like really think about it. And I say to listeners, think about what's important to you, and is your partner really on the same page as that? They don't have to like Star Trek because you like Star Trek. That's not what I'm talking about. But if they're super turned off by the way that you're behaving, like, or you're turned off by their behavior, like you might want to have some, come to Jesus moments, if you want to say it that way,
A
or
moment of contemplation, I would say, a moment of
come back to
self-reflection and
yourself,
contemplation. Yeah.
and come back to like, what is really true here for me. And sometimes we get in our heads too. We start making up stories in our heads about people. That's I've definitely done that. And then when we actually have a real conversation with the other person, it's like, oh, so they didn't really mean it that way. They were just going through this. They were dealing with that. They didn't tell me about this. I didn't know about this. There's unknown information here. Ooh, okay. Maybe there's a reason they didn't tell me, and there's something that we need to look at here, and just have some more transparency between us. Again, that communication piece. But communication happens when we feel safe with them.
Mm.
So if
I
we don't
love
feel
that
safe,
word. I love that word, feeling safe. And
mm,
Christine, I can tell you that in many of my relationships, I thought I was safe, but then I wasn't. I was until I wasn't, right?
yeah,
But then I've been in relationships where I truly felt safe. And by that is pretty much what you said, that I could be vulnerable, that I can be totally myself, that I just know that when I say what I want to say to this person, there's no judgment. They just love me as I am, accept me as I am, including my quirks, including my pet peeves, including my craziness and whatever, right? And that is, to me, is unconditional love, right? Is that when they love you utterly and completely and you can be safe and yourself with them, that is like the biggest form of intimacy for me, more than sex itself, to be honest. Like, sex is great, okay? But if I can sit with someone and be totally myself, I know I am in a safe environment, that they'll love me and accept me as I am and not judge me. I don't need anything more than that. That is it for me. That is the top for me.
yeah. I think that's what we all really want to be with somebody who like we can feel safe with, and like you're right, like I think that is the ultimate form of intimacy, because I mean, if you're in fight or flight, you're in freeze, you're not really being yourself. You're kind of performing so that you'll survive. If you're in survival mode, like how can you be yourself? Like if you're terrified of like losing your home, or losing access to finances, or losing access to your children, or whatever your situation might be, then that's not safe. Like you're not safe. Even if the person hasn't actually done anything, there's something in their behavior, or the way that they're communicating, the way they're behaving, that puts you in a place of being, ooh, I better watch my step here. Well, how can you be honest with that person? How can you feel safe? You can't,
Yeah.
because they could blow at any moment. It's like, that's not good.
Well, the question I want to say now is it possible to have a successful relationship without emotional intimacy?
I think if there's like agreements in place, but I don't think that's a long-term solution, because I don't think we actually want that. Like, I think we actually want to feel safe, and we want to be able to be emotionally intimate with the person. Yeah, we could potentially have a relationship where, okay, it's not really emotional, but like, how long does that really last? I mean, I'm like the opposite. Like, I'm all the emotional intimacy, and then I'm like the opposite of like, okay, I don't need the rest of it as much. But then that doesn't feel super good either over time. Like long term, no, I want both. Like, why do I have to choose? And so like that's the truth though. It's like we do get to have both, but it's like we have to make sure we're with the right person. We have to make sure that we are compatible with the person that we're with. And if you're really honest and we're truly not, then get honest. Like what's I mean, I know it can upend your life. I know that can be challenging. I understand that piece. But like what's it going to take? I find that when we ignore a problem, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until one day you're slapped upside the head with it. Well, you could wait till then, or you could, make a change and start gradually making that change, gradually moving out of that situation or moving into something more preferred, you know?
Not only that, Christine, some people resolve their conflicts with sex.
True.
You be like continuously in disagreements, never seeing eye to eye. Every single problem doesn't seem to ever get resolved. You just argue about it or stop talking or just pretend like nothing happened and then have sex, make up sex, like they call it, right? And then you think everything is okay. You get closer again until the next issue, until the next problem, until the next fight. And then it's an ongoing thing. And some people's relationships are built on that year after year after year and with kids and all. And that
Yeah,
is just so sad that that's how we are in this dynamic. And I want to bring up one more thing.
sure.
Some people till today don't know the difference between sex and making love.
Oof.
Let's talk about that one, Christine.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, to me,
I mean, without
okay.
too much details, okay?
Yeah, no, no, no. I mean, I'm just recalling a situation where I believed there was a making love aspect because I believed it was all making love. Naive me when I was in my 20s. And the person was like, "Oh, like we're not like a thing, so like see you later." I was like totally thrown because I didn't expect that because I'm like I wouldn't do that. Like I wouldn't be like that. So how could somebody else be like that? Don't understand this. When I kind of like went deeper into myself through healing work later on, it was like, okay, maybe I wasn't really emotionally available for more, but like the shock hit my system so strong that I was put off by all of it for a long time. So, yeah, like I would say like making love is there is intimacy, there's understanding, there's communication. And some people might say, "Oh, well, that happens in sex too." But like there's a sex feels like, oh, we're just doing the deed to me. And making love to me feels more like I'm with you and I'm really with you. Not just my mind is here. All of me is here in this space with you. And what you're feeling is just as important as what I'm feeling. And both people think that way. What you need is just as important as what I need. And they're both thinking that way. And that doesn't mean you dishonor what you want or what's, on a like you don't do things that are uncomfortable to you. That's where you be honest. That's where you say, you know what, I don't really like this. This doesn't feel good to me. And that's where the other person, if they actually have any respect for you, would say, yeah, I get that. It's okay. And again, that's a negotiation is like, am I, is this something that's a complete, I can't tolerate this. I absolutely require this in intimacy in the bedroom and stuff like that. Or is this something that I love this person so much, I don't even really care that much? Because it's not really about that. It's bigger than just this one act. That's the difference to me.
That is the most beautiful answer someone can ever say to describe a making love versus sex without actually being like explicit about the act itself. That is beautiful. I love that. I love that, Christine. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
I want us to talk about what turns us on.
Hmm.
That's a big subject when it comes to whether it be making love or sex and intimacy and all of that. We all get turned on by something. And it could be physical, it could be a behavior. Some people think what turns you on is just physical. Most people, anyway, people I've spoken to, when you ask them what turns you on, they'd be like, "Yeah, I like her this or I like his that," right? And they talk about a particular physical aspect, right?
Hmm.
But some people can be turned on by a behavior, by the
Hmm.
way they carry themselves, by certain words they speak. It varies, right? And I want to bring this up for everyone to understand that being turned on is so much deeper than you thought. It's not just about desire, it's not just about an urge, a need that pops up, it's not just about hormones,
Yep.
right? And I'm going to share what used to turn me on. Okay. And it's probably something that most people are not going to even imagine. I
Hmm.
didn't even think it was possible to be turned on by that. But what used to turn me on is seeing a man in a suit,
Hmm.
carrying himself in a nice suit. I used to work in corporate back in the days, okay? Like from like 20s, let's just say, into my a little bit into my 30s. After that, I no more corporate for me. But like I used to take the subway and go downtown, and it was all men in suits. You go to work, you like you go to the office, and like suits, suit. And I'm like, of course they're all married,
Yeah.
always, always. But yeah, I mean, I'm just joking here. But like that used to turn me on a lot, and till a very recent time, I think it did. Now, of course, what turns me on is a man out of the suit. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Actually, no, I'm not kidding. But no, no. On a serious note, what turns me on is another weird thing right now that people are going to think I'm crazy. What turns me on is someone that's willing to be vulnerable and do the inner work and heal themselves from their wounds.
Hmm.
That now turns me on more than anything else because then I see right through them.
Hmm.
I see that they are growing, evolving, and that meets me where I am because I'm looking for someone to be compatible with now, right? I'm not looking for someone to just have fun with. Been there, done that, all good, right? That phase is done, right?
Yeah.
Been married, lived it, I did it all, okay? I did it all. But now I'm discerning, right? So, okay, a man can pass by in a suit and I'll be like, looks nice. And that's it. It stops right there. I don't go further in my thoughts. I don't go imagining and fantasizing. I don't, right?
Hmm.
But now it happens in conversations. When I speak with a man, because that's how I roll, right? When I speak with a gentleman
Hmm.
and the way he speaks shows me that he's been doing work on himself. You can see it, you can sense it in the conversation. I do, I pick up on it. And the more the conversation goes on, and I go, wow, you exist? Someone like you out there exists? I didn't think you did. So yeah, that's me. I don't know if you want to share yours or talk to us about this turning on subject that I'm bringing up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a big thing for me was like, yeah, I think a thing that was a turn on for me for a long time, and I'm kind of been like a little out of touch with this for a long time because I've been really focusing on myself and just growing my business and doing more sort of like sustainability kind of things and stabilization type things. But I really like somebody who's direct. So I date women, but basically like I find sometimes people are so wishy-washy. It's such a turn off that when somebody's direct, isn't trying to play subtle like power games with me or like trying to be insinuating things. Like if somebody tries to insinuate with something with me, back in the day, I used to like it went right over my head. I had no idea what they were even going on about. It's like this person crazy. And so it's like, but they were trying to be seductive. But it's like, I don't operate that way. Like, you need to be more direct with me. So then I started attracting more direct people, but like, it was just sort of like, I never really found the one. And so, it's neither here nor there, but like, that was a turn on for me because I found actually in my childhood I found that people were very indirect about their communication. They wanted to sort of like kind of be passive aggressive, or they wanted to like sort of avoid certain topics or just not say the thing that they actually meant to say. And so I think, when you kind of you see through it, and for me anyways, it was like I could see through it. It was like, why can't you just say what you really frickin' mean, damn it? So, it was just so then when people beat around the bush for me, it was like a turnoff. It was like, just like just go away with your word salad games. I'm not interested. And I know that that is not always everyone's preference. Like some people like more subtle seduction type of methodologies, and that's totally fine. But at the time, that was the thing that turned me on, was like somebody being direct and saying what they wanted and not leaving me to guess and wonder what they meant by this, that, and the other thing. Because I was sick and tired of reading through people's insinuations at that point, right? So, my perspective on, certain things that turn us on, I think it depends on where you are in life too, right? Like right now, you mentioned that you're turned on by a man who does the inner work, and there's evidence of that, right? And it's like that's kind of, to me, that sounds a lot like, I like somebody who is aware of his limitations and is aware of where he gets to grow and expand, because I know where my limitations are, and I know where I get to grow and expand. So like there's a mirroring effect to some degree, I think. But then, the suit thing, I think there's like that's an authority thing to me. That's somebody who's confident and has a sense of authority, internal authority. Like they know who they are. They're like crushing the game and whatever it is they're doing. And so it's like, where in me am I like seeking to feel more authoritative in my own experience over my own life? And where do I want to feel more confident? Right. And like for me, it's like I was sick and tired of reading through people's, you know, word salad sandwiches. um, as I call it, it was like, for me, it was just refreshing to have somebody direct, because all I wanted to do was be direct and receive directness so that I didn't have to guess what people were thinking or what they were doing and why they were doing it. It's like so exhausted of that, right? And so, I believe a lot of our turn-ons are related to that, and something that we ourselves have within us, but maybe haven't fully embodied, or something that, we wanted for a long time, but wouldn't let ourselves have, or we couldn't get it for whatever reason, right? Our environment didn't actually create space for that for whatever reason. So, to me, it's like, it depends. Everyone's turn-ons, like if there's, a domination kind of kink going on, it's like, where do you feel like you want to be sort of maybe taken care of and protected? Where do you feel like you don't have a lot of authority or say in your life? And maybe there's some part of you that's craving that sense of like of experiencing that in a physical way with another person, or vice versa, right? So, I mean, there's so many different things that you could go down the rabbit hole with, and I'm
Yeah.
sure it's not simple for everybody.
Mhm.
But I would say like being present with like, why do I like this? Like, what about me gets sort of like, what does this fulfill for me? What fantasy do I have that maybe I want it, but I don't think I can have it exists there? What do I need to resolve? So sometimes it can be something to resolve. It can be a wound too, right?
That's deep. We went beyond, well, this particular thing excites me, to like, what does this really mean for me? I mean, I'm glad we're having these conversations, because usually what turns you on ended up being a kind of a shallow conversation between people. Like I've had conversations with my girlfriends and I've shared, oh, he turns me on or this turns me on, right? And it's usually a physical aspect.
Mhm.
And it's nice, it's great, and no one is saying anything wrong about that. But then if you are a person who is now deeper, this is where you are. You want to be met where you are. You shouldn't have to settle for less. You shouldn't have to continue living in the dynamic where it's all about the shallow turn-ons or about the shallow intimacy, surface intimacy. You want deeper intimacy. You want the compatibility. You want to be met where you are in all aspects, and you should not settle for less. And I think that's the gist of our conversation here today when we're talking about our relationship with sex and men versus women and how we are raised or how what's intrinsic within us, how we are wired, you know, and all of the beliefs that we carry with us that end up influencing our day-to-day lives and our relationships and our marriages and so on. These are very important conversations that we really needed to have. And I'm glad that we had them. And I think this conversation will land with someone today when they listen to this and perhaps have a moment of contemplation to ask themselves, what really turns me on? You know, and with that, I want to leave some self-reflection questions for my audience. And I want to ask you this. Does intimacy scare you? And why? Sit with that for a moment. And another question, what turns you on? And maybe now there's an invitation that Christine just brought to our attention that what is it in you that is being mirrored? Where haven't you met yourself? How haven't you shown up? And maybe perhaps that's what's turning you on because there's a need. And another question, and it's the last one. Do you know when you're making love versus you're having sex? I want you to sit and contemplate on those questions. Perhaps you'll understand yourself a little better. Christine, any final thoughts that you want to leave us with? We've had a wonderful conversation, but if there's anything you want to end this conversation with, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think wherever those questions lead the listener to, meet that answer or those insights with like compassion and love for yourself. Don't judge yourself. We think everyone's judging us, but most of the time I would say it's an internal judgment. And if we can just let ourselves be human and explore this within ourselves, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to go out into the world and act a certain way and take on a whole identity or whatever. You don't have to do any of that. But if you can just know that yourself, being with yourself is safe, that's the first place of safety. That's the first intimacy that's safe that you create within yourself. Can I really be honest with myself without judging? Because I mean, what's there to judge? Oh, society doesn't like that, or whatever. It's like, okay, but you're not having a conversation with society. You're having a conversation with yourself. If you can have that conversation with yourself, then maybe someday you can start to have that conversation with a partner that you do feel safe with, that you do want to have more deeper intimacy with, and that you do want to actually have more compatibility with. So meet yourself in love, meet yourself in compassion, meet yourself in trust, and don't abandon yourself just because somebody said something one time that you overheard or somebody did something. Like, be present. You're not that scary. It's not that scary. It's just you. That's
I
all.
love that. I love that. Thank you, Christine, for this beautiful conversation and for being here on the show. I loved every minute of our conversation. And if someone wants to reach out to work with you, how can they reach you?
Yeah, please find me on Instagram. I am the Living Architect, and I'm also on Facebook as well, Christine Forde. That's the primary place that you can find me, and I'm always open to having, candid conversations that are respectful. And yeah, I love. Thank you for listening. Thanks for joining, and thanks for staying this long if you're still listening.
Thank you, Christine.